Hi Lupita, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
We were just saying backstage, I think this is your third time at London Film Festival.
I think you might be right.
So it's incredible that you keep making movies that we want to show. I mean, we want to show all of your movies.
Thank goodness.
I want to start with a bit of a big question, but can you take a minute, take a breath? No, it's not, nothing scary. Can you think of a film or films or a performance that made you fall in love with cinema?
Well, one of the films I watched the most growing up was The Sound of Music.
Excellent choice.
Yeah, and I come from a family with lots of children. And so I really related with the Von Trapp children. And I had a father that was always busy, not as stern as Captain Von Trapp, but I definitely related with like the yearning for a father's attention. And I wanted that governess relationship that I never got. So I think, that was a movie that really affected me. I love the costumes in it, and of course the music, and so I would just fall every time. I would fall in love with that family, and so I think maybe it's what formed my love for cinema.
Amazing. And you have kind of done a musical in a way with Little Monsters as
well. That was my moment.
Yeah.
For sure. And I loved making that film because it was kind of Sound of Music-esque, I suppose.
It's true.
And it's in an absurd way.
A very twisted Sound of Music.
Yes, very, very twisted.
I like it. I mean, we will go on to be discussing a lot of your roles throughout this talk, but rewatching a lot of your films to prepare for this, I was really struck by how I don't think any film that you've done is like another. Every single role is kind of something new and surprising and exciting. Could you tell us about what your approach is to choosing these roles?
Well, thank you. That has been my intention. When I started, I was really worried about getting typecast, and I had dreamed of having a career that was varied and surprising, and that required me to stretch myself every time. And fortunately, I had that opportunity because of the success of the very first film I made. And so I've been trying to make good of that promise to myself. I would say that the way I choose roles is I have a very short attention span. So I choose roles that hold my attention, number one. Like, I've got to be deeply interested in reading the script again, right? And so if I can't get through the script, chances are I won't get through making the movie. So first, does it interest me? And then what does it ask of me that I already know? And what does it ask of me that I don't? And if I'm interested in the things that I don't yet know, then it might be worthy of my time. Because I recognize that when I'm working on a project, I'm giving it my life force, but I'm also giving it my lifetime. And I don't get that back. So I want to work on stuff that feel worthy of my lifetime.
Absolutely. This is your legacy, and these films are going to be, they're going to be around for a very long time.
Yeah.
You mentioned your first ever film role, and that is a perfect place to start. So let's watch a clip from 12 Years a Slave. I mean, even just seeing like a corner of that performance from where I'm sitting on the stage, it's just still as incredible as the first time that I saw it.
Wow.
Just what film?
Yeah, I mean, all these years later, it still has a very emotional and physiological effect on me. I actually don't watch it.
I can imagine.
I can't, actually. I can, but I choose not to.
I think that's very fair. You were in an incredible situation. You were still in college at Yale when you auditioned for 12 Years a Slave, is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
absolutely amazing. And what was it like auditioning for Steve McQueen and, you know, knowing that your college career was coming to an end, you were about to go out there into the wide world and having this opportunity potentially come to you?
So it happened in my third year at Yale, which is my final one. And we were getting ready to graduate, so we were preparing for our showcase. For anyone who knows anything about drama school, you prepare these short scenes that you take to, in America's case, you take it to New York and LA, and they invite industry professionals to come and see you, and the hope is that you get a manager or an agent from the event. And so I was very busy with making plans for after I graduate, like where am I moving to? Am I moving to New York? Am I moving to LA? And I was auditioning for a lot of things. So 12 Years a Slave was one of them. And to be told, I didn't have time to be precious about it, because it was go to that audition, go to that, go to rehearsal, go to, you know. So I was very much on the move, and it really didn't become real until like the fourth audition, you know, fourth or fifth, I can't remember. I just feel like I kept auditioning. The first few auditions were on tape, and then I was invited to audition for the casting director, and that's when it started to get realer, right? And then the final audition was, I was going to be flown down to New Orleans, Louisiana, to audition for Steve McQueen. And that's when I said, oh, hold up. Wait, this is now very, very real. And it was a time of really panic, right? Because panic, but also I have nothing to lose yet, right? All I have to do is do my best. And one of the things we were taught in our auditioning for camera class was that the best way to approach auditions is as though you have the role for the duration of the audition. Mm-hmm. So that attitude of this, and to treat the audition as a rehearsal, right? As though you had the role. So I was meditating on that approach, trying to really just steep myself in that perspective. And then I went down and auditioned for Steve, and Steve is intimidating. And he's a truth talker. He doesn't mix his words, and which was refreshing for me and reassuring, because I knew that I didn't have to try and figure out how he felt, and then just do the work and be malleable and porous, to be able to take notes from him and respond. And it was amazing, right? It was amazing to have that opportunity to audition for such a prolific artist. And then it was about, okay, I did that, go back and forget about it. Mm. I didn't have to wait long, because as soon as I landed back in New Haven, I got a call that evening from him saying he'd like to offer me the part. And my knees buckled. I was in the driveway of my little house, and my knees buckled, and I just hit the ground, and I just said, I would like to accept the part. And then he said, there's a lot of work to do, Lupita. It's not all done yet. And I was like, yes, I understand. And then I got off the phone, and I was just like, I just didn't know. I could still feel the elation of that moment. I'm like, what has just happened? And then, of course, I had to deal with a lot of imposter syndrome and more panic before I got on set. But, I'm grateful that it happened in that moment when I was just like completely juiced up with 3 years of committing my time to understanding my instrument, And so I had a lot of tools in my backpack, and I had the confidence of not being precious about things. You try it, you let it go. You try it again, you just keep moving. So that really, I think, put me in a good position, because it's when you're not desperate for something that usually you get it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And your character of Patsey, she is in Solomon Northup's memoirs,
She is.
12 Years a Slave, but kind of a peripheral character that's fleshed out for the film. Is that right?
Yeah, I wouldn't. Well, there's a lot of key characters in Solomon Northup's book, and the mention of her is significant, but it's in no way, you wouldn't know that. You don't get a full profile of her. You just get some really key information, right? Like one of the things in the book is that she knew where her parents were from.
Oh, okay.
Right? I think I remember that detail. And that was a badge of pride for her because many people did not at that time. And that's all I remember right now. But yes, she wasn't fleshed out by any stretch of the imagination, but there was some really important clues there. And she obviously had a deep impact on Solomon because of what she went through. And so for me, it was taking those bits and then really steeping myself in the history of the time. I grew up in Kenya, and American history we learned about, slave history, footnote, right? So I really didn't know much about it. I mean, I'd watched Roots, but I'd never been steeped in that time in history. So for me, it was about trying to understand it as best I could, understand the timeline, the politics of what was going on, the rule of law, all of that, and then I read a lot of other memoirs from enslaved people, and I didn't even realize there was all this literature about it, So it was a real learning curve for me, getting to play Patsey, and it really helped me to understand the country that I'd emigrated to a lot better.
It's so interesting as well because, you're Kenyan, Steve and several of the cast members are British as well, so it's such a kind of international perspective on, a very American depiction of slavery. I wonder if your international background's kind of added something to the
I
film.
mean, I will leave that to the intellectuals to no,
You're
for real.
one of them.
No, but for me, I'm too close to
Of course.
to really give. I will say that I appreciate the chance to take on that perspective so personally. I think it made me a more responsible immigrant, to really understand the shoulders on which I stand, Because when you get to America, that Black history is not present on a day-to-day level in a way that you can, absorb. You know what I mean? Like, even a few years ago, they opened that incredible museum in DC, right? The National History.
That place is absolutely incredible.
What is it called? The National History Museum of
African American history, I think it is.
African American art. It's a long name, but it's an amazing,
and it's a huge building.
And it's and I was there at the opening. It's incredible. It's incredible. At the time when I was doing 12 years, I remember going to a Blacks and Wax museum in Baltimore, and that was really important for me to experience that. I mean, I like to experience things in 3 dimensions. So I was starving for that. 'Cause you can read literature and all that, words, but for me, it's so much better when I can steep myself in it. So that Blacks and Wax museum was pivotal for me to step into a boat replica and feel it in 3 dimensions. And I think that's what 12 years contributes to our modern understanding of that time, because you get to take it so personally watching the movie. And there's value in that because then it's not theoretical, And so living in America, I can see the remnants of that time playing out in today's politics because I've taken the time to take that time personally. So so I'm glad that I was able to, and I honestly, I'm glad that it wasn't my history, because the effect, I couldn't even watch that clip. Patsy, I feel her still so viscerally, So if I had that in my DNA, man, that would be even harder, you know? So, yeah, I'm grateful to have had the experience with my background and with my present context as an immigrant in America.
That absolutely makes sense. So you make this incredible and very tough film, and then you go on this crazy journey with the film, and you win an Oscar. Can we get some noise for that?
Thank you.
I mean, just, the most incredible thing. And I remember so clearly back in, was it 2013, 14?
When the Academy Award was
2014, wasn't it? Yeah. You are, you're being quite rightly critically acclaimed for your performance, you're winning awards, you're also having this incredible red carpet moment, and you're turning looks at every single award ceremony. Was it kind of surreal to have these two things happening in parallel, or were you like, this is just part of the journey now?
It was really wild to be promoting a film about a woman with who had no agency, right? And a woman that had her personhood stripped from her on a daily basis and still managed to preserve herself in some way. And then in promoting my work as her, be decked out in like all these brands and like designer clothes and red carpet. The glam was such a contrast from that experience, that place I had to go to play that character. But it was also, it was a reflection of the work and the battles that had been fought to allow me to do that, right? And so I was confronted by the contrast, and again, my heart was just overwhelmed with gratitude, because, I mean, the enslaved people that we were depicting could not have dreamed of this moment, and yet they fought. They fought to ensure a freedom that I am now enjoying, So I remember just saying, when you are being blessed, it's so easy to block your blessing because it's too much, or, we're conditioned, especially in school. I was trained to expect to struggle as an actor. And so when my first job was just creating all these exponential opportunities, there were moments where I could feel myself tensing up, because you're like, wait, is it supposed to happen this way? And is someone gonna take it away? But I was surrounded by people who said, count your blessings and allow them to happen. Allow the yes, because there's plenty of time for no. But now is a moment for yes, and so open your arms and take it. So it was a time of bounty, and I just remember just reveling in it. It was amazing.
Yeah, and I suppose maybe you needed that joy after that experience, and I think as audiences we needed that joy as well. It was such a moment of black joy seeing you on the red carpet.
Right, but the lesson that I learned playing Patsey was that. Joy is not the absence of pain. It is feeling happiness in spite of it. And that was something that I felt was governed the spirit of Patsey. She's making those corn husk dolls. There's something really still hopeful about her hopeless situation. And I think that's what breaks our heart about her, And so, yes, it was that, like, the opportunity to feel joy in spite of the pain that we were reflecting on.
Yeah. And this is just a crazy statistic to read, but you're one of 10 black women to win acting Oscars. It's 2024, we're still at 10. But how does it feel to be part of that legacy?
Surreal. Before I went to drama school, I honestly had never watched the Oscars. And then at drama school, we started to have like dress-up parties where we would dress up and like sip on champagne as we watch the Oscars and like judge people's clothes and stuff, and like fill voting cards with like trying to depict who's gonna win and all that. So I didn't grow up with that as a destination, or as a thing to aspire to necessarily. I knew they happened, but it was abstract, And the year before I was at the Academy Awards, I was in my pajamas watching the Academy Awards, So it was just, again, it was really surreal. And then, learning about the history, Hattie McDaniel, and how she had to come through the back and all of that. It was just like, wow. It's hard to wrap my head around what that meant. And at the time, I had to kind of ignore the significance, right? The racial significance and what it means to an entire community of people, because I had to live my life step by step. And this was a reality that I needed to adjust to. And thinking theoretically, like from that sort of meta perspective would not have been an advisable way for me to guide my footsteps. But now, with it in the past, I'm really proud. Of course, I'm extremely proud to be a part of that legacy, right? Because obviously the Academy Awards are a symbol of a historical symbol, right? Mm-hmm. They're a marker of what is important to an industry at a time. They're not the ultimate marker, but they are one, and an important one. So to be a part of that, of course, means a lot to me as an African, as a Black woman, as an immigrant. It's deeply meaningful. Mm.
And before we go to our next clip, the years immediately following 12 Years a Slave, some incredible things happening again. You go from winning an Oscar for 12 Years a Slave to one of the biggest, if not the biggest franchise in the world, Star Wars. Mm-hmm. Did you grow up as a Star Wars fan? Was that ever on the cards as something you wanted to be part of?
Okay, I have a confession to make.
This is safe space. This stays in this room.
Caveat. So, I grew up watching Star Wars, but I didn't know it was Star Wars. And I'll explain. Over our public holidays in Kenya, they would be public holiday programming. And that programming included Star Wars. But sometimes they would play an hour of it, and then you would have to catch another hour later. So I watched Star Wars, and I knew Luke Skywalker, I knew R2-D2, I knew C-3PO, right? I knew the Ewoks, and they all featured, but they were kind of like something I just associated with public holidays and not going to school. So I didn't really sit down and watch the movie. I felt like I watched it episodically. So when I actually got the audition to go in for J.J. Abrams, and they said, it's for Star Wars. And I was like, what's Star Wars? I had to take a minute and be like, what the hell is Star Wars? And then I looked it up, and I rented Star Wars, and I watched it. And I was like, oh yeah, this is Republic Holiday. I remember these guys. And then it occurred to me, oh, they were all in one movie. Okay. So it was this bizarre situation, right? And so I went in, but I didn't have the lore of Star Wars. And then once I'd rewatched it, then I saw it everywhere. I was watching SNL, and they were referring to Star Wars, and I realized, oh my God, this is so much a part of just the lexicon, the cinematic lexicon. It's absolutely everywhere. I thought, oh dear, this is a big deal. And by then, I had gotten the part of Maz Kanata. So yes and no, right? And again, I think my ignorance served me well, because I didn't feel dwarfed going in for the meeting with JJ. But once I got it and I was on set, and the first Star Wars was so practical, all those puppets and all the animatronics and all that, it was wild. Again, it was just like I was on another planet, and it was a playground, and it was very intimidating, because 12 years was my first film, and now I'm on this film, and there's like maybe 3 times the number of crew and effects, and I still really didn't know how to perform for camera. Like, I was still quite a baby when it comes to my understanding of cinematic work. So I remember doing things and JJ saying, okay, can you do that again to the camera? And I was like, oh yes, again, I'm not on stage. It's like, yes, oh yes. So it was, again, more of a learning curve on a very big stage, and I was very happy to be mocap, for sure.
And you look back at the cast of those sets of Star Wars films, and it's such an incredible group of people that are kind of like Hollywood royalty now, including yourself. But you were kind of all coming up at the same time. People like Adam Driver, John Boyega, Daisy Ridley. Was it nice to be kind of in a group of people where you're all kind of finding global fame and finding your footing at the same time?
I didn't realize that. I will say I had watched John Boyega in Attack the Block that Christmas before I knew I was going to be working with him, and I loved Attack the Block, and I thought he was amazing. So when I found out he was going to be in this, I was really chuffed by that. But I think I was in my own world at that time. I was really trying to catch up with my own life circumstances. So unfortunately, I didn't really reach out. I grew close to John, and we definitely commiserated on, like this wild and wonderful world we were now a part of. But I was still very much trying to figure out my own self, trying to figure out what would become of me. Was I a one and done? What the future would look like, what I wanted, how to adjust to like being able to afford taxis, just simple things like that. When I was just taking the subway, and now all of a sudden I can't take the subway because everybody recognizes me, and I don't know where to go, and I don't know where to feel safe. There was just a lot of newness in my life that I was grappling with, and obviously I was playing a motion capture character, and everybody else was not. So that was also a very jarring difference, because everybody else got costumes. I was in this one onesie with dots all over it, and then I had this camera contraption that shone these lights on my face at all times. So whenever I walked on set, everybody looked at me, and it was just like, oh no, I don't know what's going on. So I had to like really work on just learning how to take up the room that had been given to me, and that took a few years.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then after the first Star Wars film, you kind of take another pivot and you go to back to the theatre.
I did.
Yeah. And you star in the off-Broadway and the Broadway productions of Eclipsed, which is written by your Black Panther co-star Denai Guerrera, and was also directed by Liesl Tommy. You get to work with these two very prolific African women in theatre. Did it feel important to you after Star Wars to go, I need to go back to theatre, I need to be on the stage?
Yeah, so what happened is with 12 Years, I shot 12 Years a Slave in 2012. And then it came out in September of 2013. And then I won the Academy Award in 2014. So I had spent a year and a half not acting, but talking about acting. So when I won that Academy Award, which is like the pinnacle of one's career, and it's my first job, it was like, wait, where do I go from here? And when you have such exposure, the fear of failure grows so much, right? Because now it's one thing to strive for an A. It's another thing to achieve it and then sustain it. So for me, I was going through, okay, I have no idea what to do now because I honestly don't even remember if I know how to act. I've just been talking about it for a year and a half. So do I even know how to act? And then everybody is like lording you on this thing. And the more you talk about it, it's like you're jinx. I felt like I was jinxing myself when I'm talking about how did you get into character, all this. And the thing about acting is you just have to do it, right? So when I was working on Star Wars, one of the reasons I chose Star Wars because I would be hidden. And I needed to retreat a little bit. I felt overexposed, you know, before that with all the red carpets and all the celebrity talk, which is very different from acting because celebrity is about oneself, one's persona, and one's ego. And acting is about the shedding of that and taking on character. And so because I had taken on a new job that I hadn't really considered, you know, I felt like I needed to go back to my craft. And so while I was here working on Star Wars, I had grown close to Emma Thompson because we were on the campaign trail together. And she invited me over for dinner. And I just confided in her. I said, you know, I want to go do theater, but everyone is telling me to seize the moment and this is your time to get a lead role in a big blockbuster movie and that's what you need to do to secure your place in the industry. And I said, but I don't know cinema the way I know theater. And I feel like I just need to re-engage with my craft. And she was the one who encouraged me to do exactly what my spirit told me to do. She said, you need to follow your intuition. This industry will be there when you're ready to take that next step. And she told me about how she had taken time off to start her family and you know, some people advised her not to, and she didn't take that advice and she did the thing that she felt she needed to do, and she's doing just fine. And
she's Emma Thompson.
She's Emma Thompson. And so she really, really, really bolstered my my spirit and my confidence, and then I made that bold move to go back to the theater, and I'm ever so glad because that piece was it was a hefty piece, you know, and I wanted to get in front of my fear, and no better way than to get on stage every day with a new audience and actually do the work in front of them, and to do it with a company like the one I had, to do it with a group of Black women, and to you know, again, break barriers there. We were the first all Black female cast and creative team on Broadway. And so that felt incredibly meaningful, and we were doing a play about Liberia, an African play again. So all that felt very much in line with like with my calling, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. We are going to continue the theme of African stories with our next clip, and we're going to take a look at Queen of Katwe.
This one I can watch.
Sudan. What is in the Sudan?
Sudan is where the African Children's Chess Tournament is held. Children from all over Africa will be there. It is sponsored by the United Nations.
Is it not far?
1,000 miles away.
That bus of yours will not get you there.
There will be no bus this time. Fiona will travel by aeroplane with Ivan and Benjamin to represent Uganda. Think of that, eh? Katwe children, our children representing the whole country.
These two children are not our children. They are my children.
Of course, I just...
Me, I carried them in my body.
When they return, I have arranged for Fiona and Brian to attend the school where my wife teaches.
Huh?
On a scholarship.
Eh?
My wife has been teaching them to read.
Yes. Yes, I know, and I am grateful, but...
But what? Isn't this what you wanted? Education for your children?
Yes, but how can I pay for uniforms? How will I sell? What time does school begin in the morning?
Children can do more than sell vegetables. They have a chance to go beyond this kind of life, to go to school. Maybe one day attend university. Surely you can understand how important that is, eh?
I am not an educated woman, Mr. Katende. I understand nothing.
So you have a kind of unique experience with Mira Nair because not only do you act in Queen of Katwe, but you'd also been in the production crew for one of her earlier films. Is it The Namesake?
Yes. So I was an intern. I worked in her office while she was cutting The Namesake. So I actually wasn't on the set of making it, but I at the time was when I was an undergrad, and I got an internship with her at Mirabai Films, and yeah, I just wanted to be exposed to as much of the business as I could, because at that time I wasn't ready yet to say I wanted to be an actor. Yeah.
You were still kind of like, maybe one day I can say this.
Yeah, maybe one day. And so I interned for her there, and then I ended up working for her. She has a film lab in Uganda called Maisha, and I worked for her there over the summer. I was in charge of equipment. I was handing out the equipment to the students and stuff like that on a daily basis.
And what was it about? I guess you're getting to know her on a practical level and getting to see behind the scenes. When you get the call that they're interested in you for Queen of Katwe, did knowing her style and how she kind of ran the show, did that affect your decision at all?
No, because I really didn't know Mira as a director, because I wasn't there for the making of The Namesake. But I knew her, obviously I knew her work, right? And fun fact, my father and her husband are very good friends. Oh. And actually, it's thanks to my dad that she met her husband. Yeah. And that's another long story. But I had, I'd watched her films, and I love her work. And so when she called me to be in one of her films, first of all, I was like, wow, this is so full circle in so many ways. Because I'd sought my dad's help in getting the internship. Please send an email and say you have a daughter that's interested in this sort of thing. But I definitely didn't think it would lead to this different relationship, to being in front of her camera. So I was obviously very honored that she wanted to work with me in that way. And yeah, I love, Mira is very tactile, right? She rolls up her sleeves and she gets in there, and she's so passionate, right? And she brings that passion to everything she does. And she has a very sharp eye. She knows she has a strong aesthetic sensibility, language and lexicon. And so I knew that I was going to be in really good hands with her. And then of course David Oyelowo, an actor whose work I had admired for a long time, so getting to play with him was appealing to me as well. And Mira has a long relationship with Uganda, so I knew that she would be the person to make this movie, you know, because she was going to be making it from that sort of local perspective, not like not as like an anthropologist coming in to explain the people.
Yeah, I feel like so often you get kind of, those sort of helicopter shots and it's like, this is Africa. Whereas
exotic.
She's in there and she's like very like up close and it really feels like such an alive and like a buzzing film.
Yes,
it's
yes,
really gorgeous.
yes, yeah.
And were you familiar with, obviously this is based on a true story, were you familiar with Fiona's story before you signed on to the film?
No, I was not familiar with it at all. There was a book written about Fiona Matesi, and I think it's also called The Queen of Katwe.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so I picked up that book, and I was really impressed by her story, and I particularly liked the adaptation of it. The script of it was really strong, and so that's how I learned about it.
Yeah, it has one of, I think, my favourite ever. Like, these are the real people that the film is based on. It makes me cry, the ending. It's so lovely.
Yeah, it's so beautiful that they did that. And again, that was something that came up, Mira came up with that idea organically. I remember when we started shooting, she didn't yet know how she was going to end it. She was like, I don't want to do the thing where you just see the original people, the actual people. And then she came up with this awesome idea of having them stand side by side, and how great that they were all present and there to do that. Yeah,
it's really lovely. And I want to go back to talking about African storytelling. I know this is something that's really important to you, because as well as being an actor, you're an author. You are now a podcaster as well.
Yeah.
I wonder if you want to tell us a little bit about the podcast, but also tell us why African storytelling and being part of a continuing tradition of African storytelling is so important to you.
Okay, well, the podcast is called Mind Your Own, and it is a storytelling show, all from the African perspective. So it's not a talk show, it's a storytelling show. And every episode, I tell a story from my own life, and then I tee it off to an African somewhere in the world that tells a story from their life of a similar theme. And my desire was to kind of expand our understanding of what it means to be African, for Africans first and foremost, but also for the rest of the world that may not be familiar with Africans. Because I was starved of African story. I love podcasts. I love listening to the radio. I love audiobooks. That's my preferred way to take in information. And growing up on the continent, the radio is huge, right? Everybody's listening to the radio. I recall my father listening to sports matches on the radio, football and all of that, and people gathering around the radio for the news and all this. So listening is a big part of life on the African continent. And I was noticing that more and more the radio would be music, news, and gossip, with very few opportunities to just listen to other stories that are not politically driven about ourselves. And I fell in love with This American Life, Ira Glass's podcast, when I was an undergrad. And it was a show that made me feel less alien in America. I felt like I was learning about Americans on a very individual basis that was more intimate and truthful than what I'd seen growing up in Hollywood and on, sitcoms and stuff like that. And I started to fantasize like, ooh, wouldn't it be nice to have a show like this where we can just sit in African perspective? And so the podcasting industry, was growing, and then I started to think, oh, this would make a great podcast. I worked on it for 5 years, and finally it came out, a month ago. And it's a project that I loved making it, and I hope that people enjoy just hearing from the African perspective. And it's not hot button issues, it's quirky individual stories where peculiar and just intimate. And I wanted to just invite people to see us for how different we are and how, normal and worldly as well. So for me, when I think of African storytelling, it's really just storytelling from an African perspective. And I'm African, and I've spent my life being able to relate to people that don't look like me. I grew up watching American stuff, British stuff. I watched Australian stuff, Mexican stuff, Colombian stuff. And I saw myself in all those things, And so I'm like, it's high time people saw themselves in me.
That is a perfect opportunity for us to go to our next clip, because I think this is a film that a lot of people saw themselves in. Let's take a look at a clip from Black Panther.
Oh.
Come home, Nakia.
I'm right here.
Stay.
I came to support you and to honor your father, but I can't stay. It's just, I found my calling out there. I've seen too many in need just to turn a blind eye. I can't be happy here knowing that there's people out there who have nothing.
What would you have Wakanda do about it?
Share what we have. We could provide aid and access to technology and refuge to those who need it. Other countries do it, we could do it better.
You are not like these other countries, Nakia. If the world found out what we truly are, what we possess, we could lose our way of life.
Wakanda is strong enough to help others and protect ourselves at the same time.
If you are not so stubborn, you would make a great queen.
I would make a great queen because I am so stubborn. If that's what I wanted.
The way that this film, and obviously the sequel as well, has touched audiences and continues to touch audiences is just the most incredible thing to see. I remember seeing so many videos of people like, the queues to see the film and things like that. Were you all expecting such a strong, I'm sure you're expecting people to want to see the film, but such a strong emotional reaction to the film?
First of all, I have to admit I haven't seen the film since Chadwick died. So I'm having a moment.
We'll talk about it as much or as little as you want.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah, the grief is just the love with no place to put it, right? I don't run away from the tears or the grief, You just live with it, That experience will never be separate from the love that was formed, So, the film, this was one of those things, this film, making it, being even just hearing about it from Ryan. I remember when I had the call to talk about it. I'd actually been up for a role in another Marvel movie. I will not disclose which one. And then my agent called and said, oh, actually, no. There's another Marvel film, and they have their eyes on you, so please talk to Ryan Coogler. It's called The Black Panther. I'd never heard of The Black Panther. And so anyway, I got on the phone with Ryan, and he walked me through this story about this fictional African country, blah, 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 and da-da-da, and his idea of making it even more politically astute and relevant than the comic book that it was based off of. And when he finished, I said, wait, and this is a Marvel movie. Disney, this is Disney? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, is this your wish or is this what they've agreed to? You know, like, and he was like, no, they're on board. And I was like, what? This is incredible, right? And I could have never dreamed that this was going to happen, you know, because like all I've ever experienced in these blockbuster movies is my perspective being overlooked, right? And, you know, I've heard, you know, when Africa is mentioned, it's mentioned like that, Africa, without any specificity. And so here we are, and we're not only gonna, okay, it's gonna be a fictional nation, but it's going to be paying homage to so much truth and so much wealth from the continent and telling a really, really like, you know, not safe story. So I knew from the beginning, like, we're onto something incredible. And if they let us do this thing, if we get away with it, it's gonna be amazing. And then as we were shooting, of course, American politics was changing, and it was uncanny how things we were saying were reflecting things that were only just happening and then they had been written before. So it felt really, really timely and potent, and there was just something different about this project. And we knew that we had a lot to prove. There was a lot of fear, definitely, from the executives. Marvel was shaking a little bit in their boots. And we were too, because we knew, like, you know, we only get to do this once, and we got to do it right. And so there was just a sense of ownership that we all had going into this project. We rolled up our sleeves. The script was ever evolving. We were challenging notions. We were having really deep conversations about what this thing was saying, you know, the subtext and the underlying themes and all of that. So it felt monumental to make. And, you know, you go on set, you see the costumes, and for me as an African, it's like the little child in me that had felt so unseen every time I put on the TV growing up was just leaping for joy, you know, because it was like Africa, resplendent Africa, you know, and done with grace and respect. And so by the time the trailer dropped, we were fans of Black Panther as the makers of it, right? We went to work every day like, whoa, what's good, you know? And then the trailer dropped and we were like, what? This is huge! And I remember we were in a group chat and we were just like sharing memes and look at how the world is responding. And then the world did what the world does. Black people did what Black people do, and they just like grabbed it and made it their own. And by the time the film was coming out and people were dressing up in their finest clothes, and not just Black people. I remember being in Asia. We were in South Korea, not North. We were in South Korea, and they were coming. The journalists were coming in their traditional garb. There was a sense of people just reaching for their indigenous cultures, you know, and that was way more than any of us could have expected. That we just it permeated way more than the primary perspective. And that's the power of specificity, right? Again, because people really did see themselves in that film, and it totally shattered the myth that like Black doesn't sell. You know, that's untrue. What sells is good story, right? And that's what we told a good story, and the world responded in kind.
Absolutely. And thinking as well, you know, we were talking about legacy earlier. It's such an incredible legacy, I suppose, for all of you to have to look back on with Chadwick.
Yeah, you know, and so I watched this clip, and I'm filled with grief, and I don't know whether I'll ever be done shedding my tears from losing my friend. But I'm also like, wow, we get to see him. We get to see him alive, you know, and that's so wonderful. And one day I'll be gone, and my loved ones will continue to see me. You know, the film is incredible that way.
It really is.
Yeah.
There's so much more that we need to talk about. I'm conscious of time. I'm going to move on to the next film. So let's take, as we were saying at the beginning, you know, let's take a real shift from Black Panther to something very different, and let's watch a clip from Us.
Ooh.
Chills every time. That's some scary work you do there.
Someone's got problems.
So I'll talk more about, you know, you're becoming a scream queen.
Yeah.
Your presence in the horror genre in a minute, but you get to do a really fun thing in this film where, you know, with a scream queen, it's usually someone, they make it to the end of the film and they're the hero, but you also get to be the monster.
Yeah.
And you also, it's up to the audience to decide which one is which.
Yeah.
How did you approach both of these roles and kind of the twisting dynamics between them both?
It was fun!
Oh, chills again.
It was fun. It was. I loved making this movie. It was work. It was like a Rubik's Cube, right? So the first thing, I mean, I read the script. When they told me that Jordan was interested in me for this role, I was like, what? I was so in love with Get Out. I'd watched it 6 times in the cinema. Watched it while we were doing not 12 years, Black Panther, actually. We all went to see it together because, of course, we were working with Daniel. We wanted to support him, and then it was just like, I was evangelizing. You haven't seen it? Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. I just kept going. And
Is this where you guys went to go see it in Atlanta?
Yeah,
Is that
yeah,
right?
we went to see it. It came out while we were working on Black Panther. So then, then I got the call about, and immediately I was like, one of these days, I really want to work with Jordan. And then next thing I know, they're asking me to do his next film. Read it, and I was like, wait, not only do I get to work with Jordan, I get to work with him twice. That was cool, a cool idea. And then I thought, oh my God, I've got the time I usually take to work on one role to work on 2. And they're so interlinked that I really had to figure it out like a Rubik's Cube. And first of all, it was mining Jordan's brain because the rules of this world are straight from his mind. So I spent a lot of time asking Jordan questions. He writes so beautifully, and he's always paying homage to other filmmakers of the genre. So, you know, he gave me homework, all sorts of movies to watch that were, you know, informing, inspiring him, his approach, the way he was going to shoot, all of it. And then it was about really trying to understand. I kind of had to like do a pass where I was thinking about one character and keep notes, and then do another pass where I was thinking about the other character and keep notes on that. And really, it was about finding the yin and the yang, right? And so it was a complete mind. And I had diagrams. Like, I was like a mad scientist with my diagrams to help me keep them in order. But the key was obviously finding their posture, finding their bodies and the way they held themselves differently. And, you know, you had ballet as an influence for Adelaide, and so I took ballet lessons, which are very difficult. But they informed a lot about my physicality for both of them, right? And so finding the physical languages for both were very, very helpful for me to stay in them. And then, of course, the voices as well, the different ways that they... And what's great about Jordan Peele's mind and the worlds he creates is that there's so much symbolism, right? And so because Adelaide was hiding something, that informed her hairstyle. She has locks that covers part of her face because she's hiding something. She wears neutrals because, in the underpass, everything, there's a lot of red, and so she wears neutrals, but then it also informed what she's eating at breakfast because she's trying to hide herself, but she can't help but reach for the strawberry. So, like those details, because he has such a strong vision. When they would come to me and say, what do you want to have on your plate for breakfast? I could be like, ooh, strawberries, because like that's going to say something. So it felt like a wonderful partnership of like building character and leaving clues. He also really makes his films to be repeat watched. And so that gave me more homework of like, ooh, what can I do with Adelaide to tip off to an audience that's watching it again that she's really red. And so there would be a moment like in the window where she's worried and she touches her neck, and maybe you notice it, maybe you don't. And that was so much fun to create, but it was definitely mathematical.
I didn't even watching it recently, I didn't even get the strawberries, so now I'm excited to go watch it again.
Yeah, I just gave you an Easter egg.
You did, thank you. And as I said, I think you've officially cemented your status as a Scream Queen now. You've done Us, you've done Little Monsters, you've done A Quiet Place Day One.
Yeah.
What do you love about acting in horror, and what do you love about watching horror?
Okay, I don't love watching horror, I have to tell you. I really much prefer being the one doing the scaring than being the scared. But what I think, it's not a genre that I go seeking out, but I do think that horror films give you a lot of room to play, right? They are larger than life. And so the character opportunities have been really, really, really enticing. Because you get to go to scary places. Like, I've always wanted to be a villain, right? And I got to be one hell of a villain in this. And a sympathetic villain at the end of the day, but still a villain. And I like that the room they give me to really flex my acting muscles and try things, go to places that I don't allow myself to go to in my real life. One of, playing Red was therapy because I was allowed to be angry, in a way that we're not really allowed to show our anger like that. So, and we all experience anger, and anger is a useful emotion. And so, you can either go and play tennis, or you can play Red. And I chose to play Red. So I think I like that about horror, is that it allows you to explore emotions that you otherwise suppress. Anger, fear, anxiety. And I think that's what's great about making them as an actor, and I think maybe that's what appeals to people, why people go and see them.
I think so, but just not
It's
you.
cathartic. Yeah, no, not me.
We are going to take another exciting jump, and we're going to talk about our final film, the film that you're here for, and that is The Wild Robot.
Oh, yeah.
So let's watch the clip from that.
Oh, okay. Hello. This Gosling is yours.
Negative. That Gosling stalks me, emits noise, and makes simple tasks more complicated or impossible.
Yeah, they do that. Goslings imprint on the first thing they see, which would be you.
Congratulations!
As far as he's concerned, you're his mother now.
I do not have the programming to be a mother.
No one does. We just make it up.
Without an assigned task, my next priority is to return to factory.
Taking care of him is your task now.
Task acquired. Return mode delayed. A Razum always completes its task.
You're lucky you just have one. As a mother of 7. 6 babies. It's a full-time thing. But it's not all bad. Just mostly bad.
Do you have any information on how to take care of this unit?
They all need to eat, but yours needs to swim and fly. Oh, fly by fall. He's got to leave this island before winter. Or, how do I put this delicately? Yeah, that.
Eat, swim, fly by fall.
Or
Patience is the key.
It's okay, Mom. I'm alive.
Oh, yay.
Oh, it's such a fun, joyous film.
It is.
And I think one of the most fun things about this and about all of your voice roles is just how different they are. Like you could not, I think, unless you knew, you would not be like, oh yes, this is the same person voicing Maz in Star Wars as voicing Rosem.
Oh, good.
Do you use getting to do voice acting as a way to like try out very, very different things to other roles?
Yeah, I mean, when you're doing voice work, you are not limited by your appearance, right? Like, she looks nothing like me. And so it's the chance to really go to bold places again. I really love variety, and I want to stretch myself as much as possible. And so like a role like this, playing as a living, breathing, feeling person to play a non-living, breathing, feeling thing was an exciting opportunity and a challenge. And I really enjoyed finding Roz's voice. And she goes through quite the evolution as a robot, learning emotional intelligence and individuality. And I wanted to depict that in her vocal journey as well. And yeah, that's a unique opportunity. And you get to do really silly things in the booth in order to get the voice right, so it's liberating.
Have you perfected your robot arms now from that role?
Can you imagine? Yeah, I know.
And I read that actually like having such a kind of upbeat and positive voice throughout that film was quite physically challenging for you, is that right?
Yeah, it's quite athletic, the voice that I chose to do for Roz. So I was inspired by AI voices like Siri and Alexa. And the thing about those voices that I took away was this relentless positivity, that sound, and it's very bright. My voice is a lot deeper than Roz's starts off. And so it's a different pitch, it's a different resonance, it's a different placement vocally. And that was quite difficult to sustain. And so I was doing it often, and at one point I actually injured my voice, developed a polyp, and had to remain silent for 3 months in order to heal.
Wow.
Yeah. Ooh. So I learned my limits.
In the most weirdly upbeat, positive way.
Yes, yeah. But it's athletic. And the thing about doing a voice role like this, unlike live action where you're working on a scene or two a day, in a vocal performance, you go into the booth and they can have you do just about any part in the movie. So you have to be ready for everything. And so it just requires a whole lot more mentally and of course vocally, physically, from you. And so that was a challenge and something that I had to adjust to. This is the first lead role I've taken in animation. So I had to figure out my threshold, right, for what I can physically do without injuring myself. So I got a whole lot more responsible towards the end there.
And I think this is going to have to be our final question. It's gone by so quickly. There's so many things we haven't got to cover, but we've had over a whistle-stop tour. But without giving too much away about the film, which everyone can see very soon, there's so many interesting themes here about family and other things like that. Is there anything in particular you'd really like audiences to take from this film?
Well, one of the things that attracted me to this film, it's an adaptation of a book by the same name by Peter Brown. And when I read the book, I was struck by how well-meaning the book is. It's about, really the core theme is kindness as a survival skill, the idea that kindness eases change. She's a robot that shows up on this island and has to really adapt in order to fulfill her purpose of completing tasks. She has to go beyond her programming, but she is ultimately programmed to be of help and to be kind. And despite all the adaptation she goes through, she never loses sight of that. And I love that as a theme. I like earnest things. You know, there's a sincerity of feeling that I think it's good to tap into, you know, to stave off cynicism. And the book was that, and in Chris Sanders' adaptation here, he really maintains that. It's sweet, it's and well-meaning, and it doesn't shy away from its core message of kindness being a superpower. And so, yeah, I hope you get some of that when you get to see it.
Well, Lupita, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today, for your openness and your honesty and getting to talk about some of the amazing films in your career. Give it up for Lupita Nyong'o.
Thank you all.